It is time for Dying to Bloom.
Good morning and welcome to Dying to Bloom. I'm Carrie Potter. This is a special edition because we usually do air on the third Thursday of the month. But today is a unique show for Dying to Bloom. I'm going to give you a little bit of a break. Instead of talking about funeral and burial choices and options, it is spring, a time of renewal, and today we're going to talk about being happy and living life to its fullest. Before I introduce our guest for today, I did want to say, a huge thank you to Jeff Lewis and Tim Cassidy from News 12 for the wonderful piece they did on green cemeteries. I had a lot of fun doing it. It was recorded at Green Spring Cemetery in Newfield, New York. We met with Jennifer Johnson, who is the burial coordinator at Green Springs, and they did a wonderful piece, and it did happen to go international as well, so it was very exciting. And I'd also like to give a kudos to Jeff Lewis and Group M Marketing, because since Jeff has been helping me to promote the concept of green cemeteries and this Dying to Bloom show, he has helped get me into a lot of news media, from the News 12 to the Journal News, FiOS 1, Natural Awakenings magazine. So I certainly recommend Jeff and his business. And if you want to reach out to him, you can give him a call into his office at 845-535-3453. Now, death, of course, is an unavoidable aspect of human life, and it's often discussed only when necessary. Centuries ago, however, the reality of death was actually embraced. Not surprising, considering that the average lifespan then was around 45 years. They had these beautiful objects and jewelry that were created to remind people of mortality. These objects of adornment, they were most often rings, are referred to as memento mori. Their popularity lasted for 300 years. You can still find them as collectibles today, and it was customary to wear them in some form until the early 20th century. The jewelry often included a skull or a coffin, meant to convey the harsh reality, yet in an elegant form. They illustrated the transitory nature of life and the fact that we will all meet the same end. And the Latin translation of the term memento mori simply means, remember, you must die. Now, this show is intended to be educational and informative regarding funeral and burial choices, and to help you make the best decision for you while keeping the environment and cost in mind. And that being said, this show, therefore, I think is a form of memento mori as well. But it's also beneficial to flip the coin and also discuss how to live life to its fullest. And that was one of the purposes of those memento mori rings, to remind you that life is temporary, and let's make the best of what we have here now. And that brings me to our special guest for today. Let us welcome in author and speaker Michelle Phillips. Good morning, Michelle.
Good morning, Carrie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to start by telling us a little bit about yourself? And then, of course, we want to know, how do we live life to its fullest? And what can you tell us to help us figure that out for ourselves?
Yeah, and I also want to reflect on what you just said about death. My whole mission is to do exactly what you said. I want people to get from every single day, right? Not get through the day, right? So many people are, I need to get to 5 o'clock. I need to get to the weekend. And in our quest for perfection, we hide death. We don't look at it. And we're all going, as you said, to meet that same end, right? Everything around us is living and dying as we speak. So my mission is to help us celebrate these precious moments we have right now. And I speak around the globe. I've written a book actually called Happiness is a Habit, and it's about the habits of happy people. Happy people don't have less problems. They just have better coping skills, and they're able to live in the moment and enjoy right now. So that's pretty much the premise. I speak, I do coaching, and I write. So those are the things I'm involved in.
I'm not sure if you could answer that, but would you say, is that somewhat genetic, or is it a learned skill, or is it just a frame of mind?
The happiness piece?
Yes, and you walk around, if I just go to the store or go out to the mall, you may see people that just smile at you and say hello naturally, and then there's people who seem to have a little bit of an attitude.
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, the research, what's beautiful about this happiness research is now we have about 17 years of actual scientific data, which before we didn't, and we kind of called it positive thinking and, put on your rose-colored glasses, and it's much deeper than that. What the research has found is that 50% of our happiness comes from our genes, right? We're born with it. We have no choice over that. So that's, your parents either had it or didn't, and you got it or didn't. But the good news is 10% of your happiness comes from your circumstances, where you live, who you're married to, where you work, and 40% of your happiness is based on what you think and what you do every day. And that's where my habits come in, right? What are your thinking habits? Because complaining is a habit. Smiling and saying hello is a habit. And what are you doing every day to keep you grateful, motivated, moving forward? Happy people do certain things on a regular basis that pessimists don't. And what the research has proven, which I love, is that optimism is a learned skill. You might not be born with a lot of it, but you can learn to create what they call an optimistic explanatory style. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's good to hear. So those that are tuning in now, if you do want to make some changes in your life, if you're not feeling that happy right now, there is hope for you, and you can make changes and change your life around and really live life to its fullest. Can you tell us a little bit about your book, Happiness is a Habit? And
yeah, so how it came about was I was interested in, positive thinking way back when, before now it's called positive psychology, which I laugh, but I always believed in it, right? I was a believer even before they proved it. I knew there was something to it, and so I read everything I could get my hands on about happiness, and then positive psychology came around, and the research backed it up. I was then fascinated by the science of habits. Habits are the things you do without thinking. It's, every morning you get up and you didn't sit down one day with a notepad and a pen and say, should I make a cup of tea or let the cat out? Right? It just became your morning routine. You do the same thing. It's kind of like when you drive yourself someplace and you forget, I wasn't even paying attention, I got here. Right? Habitual. So what I did was I started creating habits for myself way back when, mentally, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. What were my thinking habits? What were my physical habits? Did I take care of my body? What were my emotional habits, meaning what was my relationship with myself and others? And then what were my spiritual habits? What did I do on a regular basis to connect myself to something greater than myself? And I was doing this because I kind of thought it was fun. And then in, 2004, my marriage began to crumble. It's, it's a long story I won't get into now, but these skills...
I know that story.
...kept me sane. I realized, yes, that at this point, all these things I've been doing, I've been building my core, what I call your metaphorical core, your mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional strength. And when the carpet got pulled out from under me, I was able, believe me, it was a hard time. It was the hardest time of my life, but I realized that these habits kept me motivated, kept me going strong, got me up after the loneliest night of my life, right? The most fearful night of my life. Mm-hmm. And that's when I wrote the book. I said, my book is 44 habits that people can choose, whichever one speaks to them. And if you practice one simple habit every 90 days for the next 5 years, one thing, every 90 days you pick something new, in 5 years you end up with 20 positive, powerful habits that you do without thinking.
20 habits? Is that what you said?
So let's say, Carrie, you said, I want to start a new habit. I need to be healthier. Mm-hmm. But something as simple as eating an apple. I'm going to eat an apple for the next 90 days. Right?
Right.
In 21 to 30 days, if you do something continuously, it becomes a habit, something you do without thinking. So at the end of 90 days, you're eating an apple every day. And they say, okay, now I want to meditate 5 times a week, or pray, or walk around the block. Mm-hmm. You do that. So if all you do is pick one, that's what I want to really stress, the simplicity of this. Just pick one thing every 90 days, and then in 5 years, that's what it adds up to 20 new habits, instead of on January 1st trying to change everything.
Right. It's actually doable, not so overwhelming. And I would like to give the phone number here. It's 845-362-0013. This is Dying to Bloom. I'm Carrie Potter. But today we are talking about living a happy life and what you can do to help improve things in your own life. And joining us on the line is Michelle Phillips, author of Happiness is a Habit. So if you'd like to call in and ask Michelle a question, or if you have a comment, please feel free to do so. Michelle, would you say, even if you want to refer to your own experience or others that you have coached or talked or helped improve their lives, as you consciously make this decision to do this, and you do take on these new habits, as you mentioned, do you think that also helps attract better things into your life?
Oh, it's all it's all energy, right? Where you're putting off an energy frequency. And that might sound like woo-woo and out there, but it's those people that come into a room and they light up the room, right? You feel their presence. When your core is strong, right? When your mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional health is strong, you have more energy. You put off better vibes. You have more confidence. Everything goes up, and the research has shown that happy people, they have more successful lives. They're better in sports. They're better in school. They age better. Because they just, again, they enjoy the day, and they get from the day, not through the day. And it comes from creating, remember, 40% what you think and what you do every day, and that's your choice.
Well, I know you certainly emit that energy, because I did see you a few years ago, actually, as a speaker for the Rockland Business Women's Association, and you really made an impact and an impression on me. We do have a caller on the line, Michelle. Good morning. You're on Dying to Bloom.
Hi, Carrie. Michelle, I believe it is. It's Anna D'Souza, known as the Coupon Queen.
Hi,
in
Anna.
Rockland County. How are you?
Hello, Anna.
And my hobby and habit is shopping with coupons and making people happy. I shop with the coupons, and I go and I donate all the food to the poor, to the troops, who's ever in need, and I've been doing this for years. And that's my hobby, habit, whatever you call it, and I enjoy doing it.
And that's wonderful, right? And it gives to you. It gives to everyone, right? Everybody wins.
I have family members that are putting me down for it. They want me to stop and get a better life, because I've lost my husband in the year of 2000, that he died, and they want me to get a better life. I have friends, but they want me to get more and start dating and stuff like that. I mean, I have what I have. I just survived another car accident. I don't know. There's a medical problem going on, and I'm praying that they figure out what this medical problem is. But this is what makes me happy. Going out, and now I can't drive, so now I'm having trouble getting to the stores and getting my bargains and stuff like that, but this is my hobby and my habit.
And Ann, I don't know your whole story, so it's just taking the time to say, you know what, this makes me happy and it fulfills me. But then being open to other areas. Your family must love you a lot, and that's why they just want to see, you in the world again. So just, again, be open, and, you have to make the decision.
I say what's on my mind and stuff like that.
Well, thank you so much for calling in, Anna.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Michelle, would you say, I think it makes sense that giving to others, or doing something that's, giving of yourself to other people, is that part of the formula?
It is. It's interesting, and I can't remember the statistics off the top of my head, but what they found was acts of kindness definitely make you happy. Someplace in the research, and I can't remember exactly, but it said, I remember the gist of it, was that if you do it spontaneously and every now and then, it makes you happier than if you I have to do it every day, or I have to do it once a week, right? So if you do it too often, it loses its effect. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's not saying that we should not be kind and do acts of kindness.
Right.
But if you're doing it just spontaneously out of the kindness of your heart, not because you're trying to check off some happiness karma, I don't know.
Right.
type of thing.
That does make sense. What about for those that are just listening in? Can you give us some tips on things that our listeners can do now? What are some simple things that we could do to make our lives more joyful?
Yeah, so the biggest thing I tell everyone is to have a gratitude practice. Studies have shown, it's impossible to stay in a bad mood if you are flooding your mind with positive memories and things you are grateful for. So I host happy hours. I host them spontaneously throughout the year here in Rockland, where everyone comes and shares good news, because it's impossible. I want people to think about what's going right in your life right now. What's working? Who loves you? Who supports you? Who has your back? We live in America, and yes, we have our problems, but compared to other countries and other places, I think, there's that new saying that says a first world problem, right? A lot of the things we complain about are not really, if we really look at them, they're not that big a deal. And I want people to say, what's working? What's going right? And when you start to find, when you think of one thing going wrong in your life, I guarantee you have at least 10 going right.
Yes. Quite often you think about that once, if you happen to have an ailment, you think, boy, I really didn't appreciate my health until I got this ailment. So quite often we don't think about what we do have until it's gone, or until it's missing, or until something happens that helps us point out that it was a blessing we had all along.
Yeah, and if you are sick, because there's many people that are suffering from illness, and I don't want to minimize that at any moment, but it's realizing that you have an illness, but if you stay in the present moment, right now in this moment, you have an illness. But what do you have? You have a warm bed, you have good hospital care, I don't know, right? You still have things that you could be grateful for, and it's really, I think what gets us most in an illness is the fear, and most of the fear is in our brains. It's in our head. It's not in the reality of what's happening right in this moment. So one of the habits is bringing yourself back to the current moment constantly, when your brain starts to feed you thoughts of fear and thoughts of death and thoughts of, what's happening right now. Right now, I'm in a hospital bed, and I just got fluids, and, they're doing everything they can to treat me. So a lot of the times we make the fear in our mind magnifies things.
So a big part of the key to being happy is controlling your thoughts. I guess catch yourself when you're having a negative thought and turn that around and focus on gratitude.
Yeah, I always say, guide your thoughts, right? And realize that they don't identify you. They're not you, right? It's just like, and I use the radio station metaphor because I love it, right? When you get in the car and a song comes on the radio that you don't like, what do? Change the station. Right? So the same thing with your thoughts. When you find yourself ruminating over a thought that's weakening you, that's scaring you, it's focus on what's going right. Focus on every time things have worked out for you. When has God opened the door? When has the right person called you at the right time? When has something filled you with joy? And again, it takes 5 minutes to think about all the negative things in your life and to feel, horrible, but it takes that same 5 minutes to flood your mind with everything that's going right and change your energy.
I just do want to remind our listeners that our phone lines are open at 845-362-0013, and this is Dying to Bloom, but we're talking about living life to its fullest today with author of Happiness is a Habit, Michelle Phillips. Now, Michelle, you just mentioned an event that I believe you said you have on occasion in the area. Did you call it Happy Hours?
Yeah, so last spring, I don't know, there's a quote I like to live by, and it says, if you create the game, you create the rules. And I thought, what do I want to do? And I said, you know what? Everywhere you go, everyone's got I call it the doom and gloom report. I understand the world is blowing up, and I don't, again, minimize that at any cost. I think it's always been, but again, through media, through social media, we get to see it on a larger scale. And my goal of the happy hours was to change the conversation a little bit, not to ignore what's going on in the world, but to, again, focus on what's going right. So in, I guess it was last May, I threw an email out to my email list, and I said, we're going to have a happy hour, and the price of admission is you must bring a piece of good news to share. I had a local restaurant in Piermont, the Sidewalk Bistro, hosted the happy hour, and my girlfriend and I sat at the bar that night, and I said, I don't know if anyone's going to come. I said, if people come, great. If not, you and I will have a glass of wine, and we'll have a nice time, and we'll go home.
All right.
About 20 people showed up, and we just stood around in a circle, and everyone shared something that they were grateful for, something they were happy about. And you're Dying to Bloom Radio. You can't know your highs unless you know your lows.
Right.
So people shared loss of a loved one, loss of a spouse or divorce, but then through that they shared something that had them rise above. And I went home that night. I was so lifted and high from just sharing. So again, when you share a positive memory, you're almost filling your positive bank account because you get to relive the experience again, and others get the benefit of your positive story. And everybody is lifted. Literally, the energy in the room is lifted when you do something as simple as sharing good news.
Michelle, I would love to have a radio show like that here on WRCR. Maybe we can put something together and find a sponsor for it. Because
that would be great. And since we're on the subject, I will give it a plug. The next one is June 1st at the Sidewalk Bistro in Piermont at 5:30.
So really? Okay, great.
Yeah.
June 1st, Sidewalk Bistro in Piermont.
Yeah, and it's at 5:30. From 5:30 to 6:30, we do drink specials. They put out a little nosh for us, and then I'm always there later, but usually we go to 8 o'clock or so, but that's kind of when the drink specials are.
I will mention that again, and thank you. And what other types of events do you have coming up? Are there any? Book signings, and also please let us know how people can get your book as well.
Sure. So the book is on Amazon. It's Happiness is a Habit. And it's Happiness is a Habit, Simple Daily Rituals that Increase Energy, Improve Well-Being, and Add Joy to Every Day. It's also on my website, www.key2unlock.com. That's KEY2UNLOCK.com. And if you go to my website, you'll also see all my upcoming events. Mostly corporations hire me, and I'm internal. I don't have a lot of public. But my next big event is I'm speaking at the Empower Women in Motion event, which is June 4th at Ramapo College. It's an all-day event for women. They want to empower women through motion and movement. So let me just double-check the date before I quote everybody.
But they can find the information on Key to Unlock.
Yes, everything's there. June 4th, 10 to 4, Ramapo College. I'm the keynote, but there's a lot of other events and speakers. It's a full-day wellness event.
We just have a few moments left with Michelle Phillips, 845-362-0013, if you do want to ask her a question or have a comment. Michelle, do you have any advice? Sometimes I may be trying to get myself in a good frame of mind and I'm thinking my happy thoughts, and then you bump into people who seem a little bit like downers. They immediately start talking about their problems and their bills, and sometimes I think, I might be having some of those same problems, but I'm not going to start talking about them and harping on them. Is there any advice on how to handle that and how to not let that bring you down?
Yeah, one of the habits in my book is really, selecting the people that you spend your time with. Mm-hmm. Most of my friends are so empowering and uplifting, but there are people, we all complain, we all have problems, not one person living, right there. We say the only ones without problems are the ones that are buried, right?
Right.
So we all have it. So, I try to be empathic and empathetic with my friends, and you listen for so long, but then you don't have to engage, and you don't have to, yeah, me too, and you don't have to buy into it and feed them more. You could say, yeah, okay, so what are you going to do about it? How can we help, and people usually, if they want to complain, they don't want to focus on a solution.
Yes.
So when they realize you point them to a solution, they stop coming to you.
Right. That makes sense.
So it's really not engaging and feeding into it.
Well, spring, as I mentioned in the beginning, it's spring now. It is a time of rebirth and growth. I love the flowers blooming outside, the warmer weather. Even if you're repeating some of the things you said in the beginning, can you please, kind of sum up for us and give us some advice on what we can start doing now to have a happy life?
Yeah, the gratitude is big. The other thing is just look at your habits. What are your physical habits? Your, again, mental, you're thinking, are you ruminating? Are you complaining? Do you say hello to people? Do you smile at strangers or, at people in general? What is your spiritual practice? And what I love about all these things is I always say you could take a walk in the woods with a loved one and hit all four, right? It doesn't mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. It doesn't mean you have to have, add all these things to your life. They all overlap. So I really ask people to tune into themselves and say, what's working, what's not working, and then add something. Don't subtract. That's my big thing with habits. It's about growth, not about deprivation. So if you add like one great habit, keep, eating a bag of chocolate chip cookies at noon like you do every day, but add apples, and then add vegetables, and then add a walk around the block, and then add a spiritual practice, and eventually you go, why am I still eating a bag of cookies every day? The negative habits will automatically fall away.
They will. And I know you've mentioned taking a walk. I'm sure it just makes sense that exercise is a part of that equation because it does have the physical attributes of releasing endorphins.
Yeah, I always say movement is life. Keep moving. Get outside. I mean, nothing against gyms. I have a gym membership, and I love my gym. But get among nature. When you go into the forest or the woods. We live in the Hudson Valley. Oh my gosh, there's so many great little hikes and little areas. And when you get outside, studies have shown being in the woods about 10 minutes, your heart rate goes down, your blood pressure decreases, and you just become more relaxed and centered, especially this time of year. I mean, I am not a hay fever sufferer, so I do sympathize with those who are. But if at all possible, get yourself outside. Go to the Hook Mountain, go to the Rockland Lake. I mean, there's so many beautiful trails here.
You're right. Rockland County is a beautiful place to live. And so I certainly agree with that. And another thought that just came to mind is, where we live. I mean, of course, we just talked about Rockland County having wonderful natural habitats out there and hiking trails. But, I also spent a few years in my youth, a long, long time ago, in Kentucky. I grew up partially in Kentucky, and I remember my mother always loved it there because it seemed the people were a little different. They're a little more relaxed, and in Kentucky, at least at that time, it wasn't unusual for people walking each other on the street to smile at each other and say hello. And another thing my mother loved was the respect the children had to the adults saying yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. And here in New York area, it's not so much a part of our culture, I guess, especially on the streets of Manhattan. You're not doing that type of habit, but I think it's really nice to smile and say hello to people, open the door and just make that contact. And who knows what kind of impact it may have on somebody else's life.
It's so true. Everyone listening has the power to do that, right? And it's something so simple which makes both parties feel good. And I always say be the example. Don't be a dull normal. Just because something's popular doesn't mean it works. Just because everybody's cranky and complaining doesn't mean that you have to, right? Don't be the dull normal. Be the example. And don't take it personal when someone doesn't smile back. I will guarantee you 9 times out of 10 they will smile back. They will say hello. Their face will light up. For that one grumpy person that doesn't, just move on.
Well, Michelle Phillips, thank you so much for joining us today on Dying to Bloom, and I hope those tuning in take in some of this wonderful advice. And I want to give your website again, which is keytounlock.com. And also you can check out Michelle's book, Happiness is a Habit, at Amazon. And June 1st is that happy hour taking place in Piermont. I'm sorry, I forgot where. Sidewalk Cafe?
Sidewalk Bistro at 5:30.
At 5:30. Any other final words, Michelle?
No, thank you so much for having me, Carrie. It was wonderful talking to you. And one of the sayings I always say is make it a great day. Put the choice in your hands.
Well, thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I'm Carrie Potter, and if you would like to hear this show again with Michelle Phillips, you can find all of the previous Dying to Blooms on the Dying to Bloom YouTube page. And please remember to like Dying to Bloom on Facebook. Meanwhile, as Michelle said, make it a great day and have a wonderful weekend.